Our second speaker is Rob Baker. Rob is the coordinator of Universities for Ushahidi, which is an organization that assists humanitarian organizations in the use of technology in low technology settings and environments. He's the guy who should have gotten your other technology to work for you. He's worked in Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean. Can I invite Rob to come up?
Hi, my name is Rob. As was said, I'm the coordinator for the Universities for Ushahidi campaign. I'm also a web developer who has been the lead developer on a lot of our deployments of what Ushahidi is, which we'll get into. For Haiti, many in the Middle East, Africa, and other such locations. So Ushahidi is two things. It is pronounced this way, and it means testimony in Swahili. It is both an organization, a nonprofit organization based in Africa, and it is the name of our open source web platform that allows us to coordinate SMS messages and geolocate them and put them on a map. This all began in early 2008 following a very tumultuous election cycle in Kenya where violence erupted on the streets. Many prominent Kenyan bloggers and developers at that time, when the media blackout hit, looked around and said, how can we get these stories out from the people as they're happening? And what tools do they have in their hands? Those were the cell phones. How can we get these how can we get them to send SMS messages to us and get those stories and use those tools that they already have access to out to the rest of the world? So in a couple of weeks, they built, again, an open source platform that allowed them to receive SMS messages, to translate them, to geolocate them, and to put them on a map. This map was, again, it was online in about a couple weeks, and it blew up. Once neighborhoods in Kenya, all around the country, were able to share their stories with the rest of the world, they started submitting them en masse. We ended up with hundreds and hundreds of SMS messages that were then picked up by major news organizations from around the world, primarily starting with Al Jazeera, but then more US and European markets started to use these as sourcing stories. Again, not able to really turn towards their usual media markets there, but getting them directly from the people. In the 3 years since, we have taken that model and we have extended it. So now we are able to take citizen-generated media, news media, NGO and government data, and social media services in a variety of formats from email, web forms, API, RSS, to aggregate all of these things together and then to share them with the rest of the world, both on the map, with the timeline, and then to also send out SMS alerts. And we've taken that model to more away from the election monitoring campaigns that we started with and into more of the humanitarian sector. Our most recent, since in the 3 years we have done dozens and dozens of these deployments, our most visible since then was the Haiti earthquake response. In 2 hours after the earthquake hit last January, we had our web platform online, and we were able to receive those messages. There it is. What we needed to do, we realized, is to do all these things, to not just receive the SMS messages, but to translate them, geolocate them, structure them, approve and verify them, to put them on the map, to have them categorized, and then to develop actionable reports and get these reports to the people who needed help. And this was really the newest thing for us. In the deployments before then, it was really more about just receiving the data and displaying the data so that those media organizations who wanted to consume it and the people around the world who wanted to see what was going on in these regions could simply come and visit the site. What we wanted to do in Haiti, though, was take that a step further and get the messages directly from the people on the ground and make sure that those messages, these messages of need, got to these first responders, got to the emergency responders who were on the ground right away so that they could get messages directly from the people, not have to go through the usual channels, get messages from people that they may not otherwise have access to, and to respond to those. Now the question we had to ask ourselves, being a really small 12-person organization, most of whom were simply web developers like myself, how can we do this in 10 minutes or less? We're not equipped to do this kind of emergency response work. So what we had to do was create internal structures for ourselves. And we had to set up a situation room, which we did actually in the basement of the Fletcher School over at Tufts University. In the coming days after the earthquake, we set up this situation room, and tough students from all over campus, as well as from other universities in the Boston area, showed up to the basement, and within about a half an hour of training how to use the platform, were able to help us sort through and sift through and filter and manage the hundreds of SMS messages, the emails, the tweets, Facebook updates that were coming into our system to make sense of them. And we also brought in a lot of the Haitian diaspora volunteers. So really not just empowering the people on the ground, the Haitian local people on the ground who were affected by the earthquake, also empowering these students, also empowering a lot of the diaspora volunteers separated from their community and their country, unable to communicate with their friends and their loved ones and their families, really wanting to do something. So we turned to the large diaspora community within Boston, within the country, and eventually from around the world. We got them to help us with the translation and also to help us kind of locate where these messages were coming from. As these messages come in, we get to know the need of really what these people, the crisis they were dealing with. A lot of these messages that came in, I'm trying to think of some that were, one message that we received was one man who was trapped in one of these buildings. And he was trapped in the building, and basically someone heard him and was trying to get him out with a sledgehammer. And so they actually made enough of a hole where they passed the man a phone. He sent a text out to us that basically was like, "I'm trapped in this building, here's my location." And we turned to the diaspora volunteers that were part of our group in the basement here. They translated this message, they found the location. We were able to send this over to the US Coast Guard, who then sent an emergency response team to this location, helped get the man out. So, and it speaks to the model that we were able to create. What we did in the coming days when the telecommunications system was back online, we set up a short code 4636. This was the message that people, this was the number that people were using to communicate to us, to send their message, where we said, text your location and your need. Very important that the location was included, because as the messages come in, they're not actually geolocated. That's what we needed the diaspora for. As they came in through our system, and we either, if it wasn't critical need, we sent it on to a group of our internal volunteers at Tufts, who then did all that geolocation, did all that translation, put it on the map, and sent out the alerts to Red Cross and first responders down there doing more of the non-critical but still emergency work. For ones like the message I just described, those bypassed the system and actually went directly to Southern Command and the US Coast Guard. This happened even with the hundreds of volunteers, and basically the path was an SMS direct to Haiti, to our system, through these volunteers, 3 minutes. Really shows the strength of what it takes and how you can empower everyone in this chain to have these systems, understand these systems, make a difference. Now I'll finish up. We did this. I like to think we saved some lives. We made all of this up on the spot. So as we look towards this kind of using this technology, these kind of systems to empower people at all sides to be a part of this emergency response, it takes us into what I like to call the community mapping 2.0. Now, if you've heard of this or if you haven't heard of this, most of what this is called is filed under crisis mapping. I disagree. I think community mapping in this sense brings in more of the process. A crisis, to me, is what happens to us, but a community is what we create for ourselves when we decide to be a part of the solution. I'll skip ahead here. We have been operating for the past few years under a sense of urgency. Moving ahead, I think what we're really going to see in this field is more accountability. Accountability to create something that is operational, not observational. It is new technology, and to date the technology has kind of come at us to get the dots on a map was good enough. Not so much anymore. Right now, I think what we're moving into is something where you really want to focus on the alerts and to be more a part of the systems that create an accountable and effective response. For Ushahidi, what that meant for us is that we developed new technology, a 2.0 of a system, crowd map, more like a WordPress kind of model where you can actually, and if anyone here is interested, you can go sign up for an account at crowd map, set up an Ushahidi instance, and kick the tires for yourself. But really, when it comes to this technology, if you're doing it right, if you're creating an effective response, the technology is really only 10% of this. The other 90% is really what it takes to create that accountability, to create that effective response. That's everything from the outreach. It's everything from creating internal structures. It's really about what we're moving into here, which is about community and about education. So we've created a couple of programs ourselves, the University for Ushahidi, training students from around the world with a curriculum that teaches them just the technology, as well as what it takes to do more peace building, more conflict management, more internal management. And then also the Ushahidi community to connect people together. As it was said before in the keynote, really the strength in this and to be effective here is more about establishing networks for yourself and establishing community for yourself that you can turn to so that when these things happen, you're more prepared to connect with people than to rely on the technology. We also created something called the Standby Task Force, which trains people around the world to focus on certain parts of what an effective outreach and an effective technology campaign looks like. It's training on the technology itself, but again, it's also really training on more of the volunteer management, more of the community, and more of understanding all of the dynamics that come with an effective response. So we've come from Haiti, and we've one of our more recent deployments is an Ushahidi response, and I think this really states to how far we've come. This was a direct response or direct request from UN OCHA when they had to pull out many of their people from Libya because of recent events there, and they turned to us to create a system for them which relied on aggregating a lot of the social media that was coming out of this area to better inform what was happening on the ground. So for their staff that were still on the ground there, we could quickly and in real time aggregate the social media that was coming out of there to inform what was happening in certain communities and certain neighborhoods so that they knew where certain hot zones would be, where dangers would be, and where more of the compelling stories and emergencies would be. So in terms of where this fits into emergency response and where this also fits into storytelling in a crisis situation, this community mapping 2.0 and the technology around it, this is where I see it kind of coming in the next year. Better analytics, better verification, data collection, and really working with local organizations and with emergency organizations on the ground to better understand, to not just kind of show up, gather SMS, and then to say, well, we have this information if you'd like to use it, but to understand the systems that they already have in place, the workflows that they've already been using in a crisis, and to take those formats and that information and to be a more integral part of the emergency response. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Just a clarification, what is OCHA?
That's a good question. I'm just a web developer.
I just don't know what that UN agency.
Thank you very much.
Coordination of Humanitarian Assistance. There's a whole bunch of front benchers who are trying to figure out what the acronym was. So thank you very much.
Acronyms in the field. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.